When I went to college, that's what I went into. Is I wanted to go into forestry, and BYU didn't have a forestry program, so I started with botany. And with botany, I was taking some chemistry classes, so I switched over and graduated in chemistry with a botany minor. And so I had the chemistry degree, and and then from there I was part of ROTC, so I graduated and commissioned into the U.S. Army as second lieutenant. I graduated from San Bernardino High School, went to San Bernardino Valley College, then on to my mission, served mission, came back to BYU and enrolled in BYU and graduated from BYU, and from there into the Army, and after the Army got into Harleco, and then I graduated from Widener University with my MBA. I was married in 1968, and we were in college. I got into ROTC. That was more of a financial move because they would pay me $100 a month. I graduated from BYU without debt. Between working in summers, building houses, and doing that, and then getting up at 3 in the morning and cleaning toilets and doing custodial, I moved off of that into the dish crew at Deseret Towers, and I became the chief dishwasher. I was in charge of a group of guys, about 6 of us. And we worked out a system that was very, very efficient. In other words, as the dishes came in, we had them loaded and into the conveyor and into the dishwasher, and things were hopping. Well, the management really didn't like the way we were doing it because we were being too rough with the dishes. And I says, well, we're actually saving the dishes because they're not stacking up and chipping against each other. That's where you're getting your chipping, not with our handling. Well, the disagreement was that it was our handling that was chipping them, and so I got fired from the dish crew. I mean, I got a pink slip, and he called in one of the other guys, and he says, and I says, no, it wasn't him. I says, it was all me, and so the other kid got to keep his job, but I was kicked out. The most devastating thing that ever happens to you is telling you that you're not wanted. And so I went home, told Rebecca that I just got fired from the dish crew, and she was very supportive. She says, it's going to be all right. What are you going to do about it? I mean, it was very no anger or anything with it. Just, okay, now what do we do? So I go back in, and they hire me into the BYU bookstore, which was an upgrade. I was getting, instead of $1 an hour, I was now getting $1.25 an hour, and I was working in a clean environment in the BYU bookstore for an old J.C. Penney's guy that learned a lot from him. One of the things that learned is this, when things are not busy, what do? Well, J.C. Penney's guy, you're folding shirts, you're getting things straightened up. You're always doing something to improve the environment. And so learned a lot from Howard Andrus was his name. He had a stroke, and he was a little bit disabled, but very, very bright as far as retail and what to do. Learned a lot from the man. But anyway, just because something is bad, something goes wrong, is not bad. There's always opportunity. So sometimes the Lord takes you through these things so that you can learn the opportunity. So I get the idea that I want to kayak down the Provo River. And And so, but I didn't have a kayak. And so I built one out of wood strips and blocks. And then I took canvas and I pulled it over. And then you take a doping and you painted the canvas with the doping, and that sealed up the canvas and tightened it. It pulled it up tight. So the kayak was probably about 12 feet long, and could get 2 people in there. And I'd take it out on Utah Lake and take it down the river. It was awesome. It was, and Ron Utter, we've talked about Ron before. He was all part of this, and we decided we're going to go up to the headwaters where it comes, just right when it comes out of the canyon, Provo River, where it's rushing out of the canyon. This is spring runoff, so the water's high and it is fast. And so, being the smart college students we are, we put on our combat boots, and we put on our heavy jackets, and no life preservers, nothing like this. And we take the kayak and we shove off into the Provo River. Well, the bridge was right there. We're just behind the bridge, and they have these concrete abutments, and the river catches us and it slams us sideways into the concrete abutment and turns us over into the river. So now here we are, fully dressed. It's cold in all of these clothes that we've got on, no life preservers. And we're going down the Provo River, and I've got the hold of the rope of the kayak, and I'm trying to pull it. Now, if you do the calculations, there's probably 400 or 500 pounds of water in this kayak. And I'm trying to pull this over to the side and get the kayak out. And finally, I catch my foot, and I go under, and Ron sees me go under. We're both going down the river. And he says, "Oh, Jay's gone." And I break my foot loose, and I come back up. I've still got the kayak. So I let go of the kayak, and I get out, and Ron gets out. So we have no idea where to the side of the river. The kayak's gone down the river. Now, this wasn't our first trip. This was, we'd had a lot of trips before this, but this was the one that killed the kayak. So anyway, now we're out. We're absolutely soaked. Everything is sopping wet. Boots are full of water. No life jackets. We've said that. And so we're walking down, and we see this little shack, and there's smoke coming out of it. So we walk in, and this guy is working on some project, and he's got a wood stove in there. And we're coming in, we're soaking wet, and he says, "You boys all right?" And we told him the story, and he says, "No, you stand here and get warm." Had a phone, so we called Rebecca. I was married, and Rebecca, we told her where we thought we were, and she came to find us. But we lost the kayak. It's probably down in the bottom of Utah Lake somewhere. I was commissioned second lieutenant into the Army, and assigned initially down to Fort Sam Houston in Texas. We're there for 6 months. Our son was born in the Army. Nathan was the first son. He was born there in Fort Sam Houston. And then we were moved up to Fitzsimmons General Hospital in Aurora, Colorado. Now, I was in the Medical Service Corps of the Army, and that was good duty. Generally, we had people coming back from Vietnam. It was during the Vietnam War, and some of these guys were pretty beat up with loss of legs, loss of arms. Saw a lot of hard stuff, and I expected orders down to Vietnam, never did go. Served in the 47th General Hospital till my discharge. Manpower Consultants of America. So Ron Utter, who he went on his mission to Brazil. He came back from his mission. I was back from my mission. I was out of the Army. And he says, I've got this deal with Manpower Consultants America. We recruit people who are headhunters. We recruit them, and we get this fee for placing them into these businesses. This is really cool. So we did this for 3 months. I didn't replace anybody. He placed one person. We did terrible. It was awful. It was so stressful. So anyway, we get to the end of about 3 months, and they says, well, can we place you? And I says, that's fine, place me. And so I had the chemistry background, and he placed me with Harleco, Division of American Hospital Supply Corporation, as a manufacturing chemist, which was my background. And that was kind of cool. So anyway, I'm working for Harleco now it's in Irvine, California, is where they were located. I manufactured all kinds of things. Diagnostic reagents was what we did. And so I worked with cyanide and all kinds of different things, and made that anything from just a couple of liters to 4,000 liters. So 4,000 liter tank is as big as a room, but you mix it and pour the salts in and get it to standardize. One of the things we made was colloidal gold. Now what this is, you get gold to go into a suspension. Colloidal is a suspended reaction, and it used to test on venereal disease, and you test blood with it, and if it settled out or coagulated, then you had the venereal disease. So we could diagnose that. But the colloidal gold was very sensitive. It had to be just right, and anything would mess up the reaction. So we would use a chemical called aqua regia, and you had to manufacture the chemical. It was hydrochloric acid and nitric acid in combination together, and it formed the acid called aqua regia. And this aqua regia would actually pick up gold particles and put it in solution. So we'd wash all of our glassware and things with the aqua regia before we made the colloidal gold. Okay, so I was just being introduced on how to do the colloidal gold, so I was doing my aqua regia, hydrochloric acid, nitric acid, and this thing is in the flask, and it's bubbling and it's frothing, and the smoke is coming out, and nasty stuff. I mean, it is really, really nasty stuff. You don't want to get it on you. You've got the protective shields and masks and ventilators and gloves and all of that. And so I leave it out all day, and it's just bubbling and getting itself settled down. And I'm thinking, okay, it looks like it's settled down. So I take it into the lab and put it under the ventilator, and I put the cork on there and says that ought to keep it until morning. I come back in the morning, and the manager is there. The flask had blown up, and there was aqua regia all over the inside of this. They had put the neutralizer on there. They were so mad. So that was my experience with aqua regia. Nasty stuff. It was one of those things. I started college at Widener University with my MBA, and as I was graduating, Harleco was in financial trouble, and they were starting to shut down. And my boss had passed away. He had died, and they had hired a new manager for the purchasing and materials department. And so I told them this, with my MBA, I'm going to go back to Utah. And so I sold my home, quit my job, packed up my family, and flew them to Utah. And then I met Ron Utter. He flew out, and he helped me drive the U-Haul. We got all of our stuff on the U-Haul, and we drove that back to Utah. Had no idea what I was going to be doing. Got back to Utah, and then I started to interviewed with Prudential. I had a referral over to Prudential. My father-in-law, who had a connection with Prudential, guy called up and says, "Come on over and talk to me, Jay. I've got a spot for you." So I was thinking, okay, well, Prudential's good. Ron Utter was working for Allstate. And I says, well, I don't want to work for Allstate. That's property casualty. I want to do something that's actually professional, like, life insurance and planning and estate planning and stuff like that. And Ron says, Jay, you belong in property casualty. You don't belong in that. And he says, let me get you an interview with Allstate. And I says, that's fine. And so I interviewed with Paul Revere, interviewed with 2 or 3 other companies, and I'd already decided that I was going to go with Prudential. And so we stopped to interview with them and accept the job. The door was locked. They had some event going, and they had a note on the door, so we didn't go there. We came back another time. The door was locked for some other reason, and so I called and got an answering machine. And what in the world is going on? And then Ron calls me and says, I've got an interview for you, Jay. And so I went and interviewed with Allstate, and they had a good interview with that. And then they called me back and says, we want to offer you a position in management, with my MBA and all of that, because I had no sales experience. And I told him, I says, I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to go over and work for Prudential. I've already got a lead there, and I don't want to go into management. If I go in, I want to go into sales. And so they came back that next day and says, we've opened up a spot for you in sales. Okay. And with that, I figured that the opportunities into life insurance had been blocked for me. And the Lord has done that all my life. He's blocked those paths for me, and He's opened up other paths for me. And it's always been the right place to go when I've gone with how that door has opened for me.